Let me tell you something. Nobody told me when I was 24. The job you're applying for right now, the one you've spent 3 hours tailoring your resume for, the one with the clean job description and the reasonable salary and the company name you actually recognize, there's a good chance it was already decided before it was posted. Not because the system is corrupt, not because the world is rigged against you specifically, but because a hiring manager texted a former colleague, because a name came up over lunch, because someone knew someone who knew someone, and that chain of knowing moved faster than the job board ever could. I know this because I watched it happen to myself, and then I watched it happen again and again, until the pattern became impossible to ignore. You are 24 years old, you have a degree, you have real skills, you have a LinkedIn profile you update when you remember to, and 14 connections, 11 of whom are college friends who are just as lost as you are. You are doing everything right by the framework you were handed. You just don't know yet that the framework is incomplete. There are two games running simultaneously in every industry you could name. The visible game, the one with the posted listings and the application portals and the automated rejection emails, and the invisible one, the one that moves through relationships and reputation and the quiet currency of being known. You are playing the visible game excellently. You just don't know the other one exists yet. And the thing I want you to understand, the thing I wish someone had sat me down and said clearly, is that the invisible game is not unfair. It is not a secret society or a closed door or something designed to keep you out. It is simply the way trust moves between human beings when stakes are involved. People give opportunities to people they can see, people they know, people whose thinking they've encountered before the moment of decision. You are not visible yet. Not because you've done anything wrong, because visibility is built slowly through a practice you haven't started. And every month you don't start, the gap between the career you're having and the career you could be having opens a little wider, quietly, without announcement, without anyone telling you it's happening. The coffee in your mug is still hot. You don't know anything has begun yet. Year 2, you have a good job actually, one you found the legitimate way, competed for fairly, earned on the merit of what you put on paper. You are good at it. Your manager says so at your review, and you believe him because the work feels real and the feedback is genuine, and most days it is enough. Here is what I want you to notice though. Here's what I want you to watch carefully, because you will miss it if I don't point it out directly. Your colleague Sarah gets a stretch assignment you didn't know was available. You find out in a team meeting where it's announced, and you feel something you don't want to examine too closely. A mixture of genuine happiness for her and a quiet, rattling confusion about how it happened. Sarah is talented. You are equally talented, and you know it, and the knowledge is not arrogance. It is accurate. What you don't know is that Sarah had coffee with your department head 3 weeks ago. Not to lobby for anything, not with an agenda hidden behind the small talk. Just to talk. About the industry, about where things were heading, about a project she'd been thinking about. It lasted 40 minutes. It cost nothing. But your department head knew Sarah's name when the assignment came up, knew her thinking, had a picture of her that was recent and human and three-dimensional. And you were a capable face in a weekly meeting, a solid performer, a name in the org chart that had not yet become a person in his mind. This is not favoritism. I need you to hear that clearly, because it is tempting to file it there and move on. This is how human beings make decisions when something important needs to go to someone they have to trust. They give it to the person they can see. You are doing the work. You are not yet doing the work of being seen. There is a version of you that has both. I want you to start thinking about that version now, before the cost of not thinking about it gets any larger. Year 4. Someone you went to college with lands a director role at a company you've been trying to get into for 2 years. His name is Ryan. Ryan is smart, reliably, consistently smart, the kind that gets things done and earns trust without stopping rooms. You were sharper than Ryan in your program. Your professors thought so. Ryan probably knew it. Ryan has also spent the last 4 years doing something you haven't. He went to every industry meetup he could find in your city. He coffee chatted his way through 3 companies before landing where he is. He stayed in touch with people he worked alongside for 6 months in 2022, not because he had a plan, but because he liked them and found it natural to check in. He emailed interesting articles to former managers with no ask attached, just staying alive in their field of vision. Ryan did not outwork you. Ryan competed in a dimension you weren't competing in. Here's the number I want you to sit with. Not because numbers are the point, but because this one has weight. 85% of jobs are filled through networking, through personal and professional connections that exist before the posting ever goes live. You have been applying to the 15% that surfaces publicly. You have been fighting in the most crowded, most competitive, most filtered corner of the market with the best resume you can write against hundreds of people with equally strong resumes for roles that often had a name attached to them before the description was finalized. 75% of resumes submitted through job boards never reach a human being. They are filtered out by automated systems before anyone reads them. You are not failing. You are playing the visible game with precision and discipline. You just don't know yet that the visible game is the small game. The gap between you and Ryan is not talent. It is not luck in the mystical sense. It is a network that compounds quietly over time, growing, connecting, producing returns, whether you tend to it or not. His has been growing for 4 years. Yours is held approximately steady at the size it was when you graduated. I'm not telling you this to produce guilt. I'm telling you because you can still close the gap. But closing it requires naming it first. And most people never name it. They just keep applying. Year 6, you are 30 years old, and there is a sensation you cannot name exactly. It is not failure. By any metric a reasonable person would use, you are fine. The salary has grown, the title has changed twice. You are respected in your organization and the work is real, and you are not falling behind by any definition that shows up in performance reviews. You are just not moving at your own velocity. You are moving at the speed of your organization's structure, which has its own ceiling, its own pace, its own internal logic that has nothing to do with how good you actually are. Your industry reorganizes. It does this every few years. Companies consolidate, roles dissolve, teams get restructured, and the people who land on their feet are the ones who had a phone call with someone relevant 3 months before the announcement. Not because they predicted the future, because they stayed in contact, because when things shifted, their name was alive in someone's mind. You survived the reorganization, but you watch a colleague with your same title move into a role that didn't exist 6 months ago. You watch someone less experienced, then you get pulled into a cross-functional project that came directly from a relationship she had with someone in another division. A relationship maintained over 2 years of quarterly check-ins she never described as networking because to her, they were just keeping in touch with people she liked. That's the thing I want you to understand about the people who are genuinely good at this. They don't call it networking. It doesn't feel transactional. It feels like having a life that extends beyond their current job description. It feels like being interested in people, which they are, and having that interest returned over time in ways that are real and cumulative and compounding. You have your work. You have your close friends. You have a world that is comfortable and honest and not growing. You are 30. The window is not closed. I want to be clear about that, but it is the narrowest it has ever been. And every week you describe this as something you'll address when things slow down. You are borrowing against a future you haven't looked at directly yet. Year 7, you are at an industry event. Your company required you to attend. You are standing near the drinks table the way people stand when they don't know how to do this. Angled slightly toward the exit, holding a glass with both hands, watching the room like it's happening to someone else. And then you watch something that you will not be able to stop thinking about. There is a man across the room. You recognize him vaguely from conference panels. He is working the room, but not in the way you'd imagine networking looks. Not the aggressive card-distributing performance you'd built up in your head as a reason to avoid this. He moves slowly. He finds one person, gives them his full attention, asks a real question, listens to the answer with the specific quality of someone who is genuinely interested. He connects them to someone else across the room with a concrete and thoughtful reason. He does this for 2 hours. He is not performing. He is just interested, genuinely, in the people around him. You learn later that he left his corporate job 8 months ago to start something. Within 6 weeks, he had 3 clients. Within 4 months, 7. He did not launch a website first. He did not run ads. He sent messages to people he'd been in real contact with for years, and they said yes, because they knew him, because the trust was already there, built in small deposits over a long time, waiting to be drawn from exactly when he needed it. That is what a network actually is. Not a list of contacts, not a collection of business cards, a reservoir of trust, built slowly, over years, through consistent and genuine presence, drawn from in moments of transition or ambition or need, and either it holds because you built it, or it doesn't because you didn't. And you find that out at the exact moment when it matters most. You have been treating this as an event, a thing you do when you need something, a transaction you'd rather avoid. What you just watched is a practice, daily, low stakes, human. And the distance between those two things is a decade of your career. Stay at the event a little longer. Have one real conversation, just one. You'll feel the difference immediately. Year 8, you sit down and do something you've been avoiding. You try to calculate honestly what the last 8 years have cost you, not in bitterness, in honest accounting, because you cannot fix what you haven't measured. The salary gap is real. Research published in longitudinal career studies shows that networking is related not just to what you earn now, but to the rate at which your earnings grow over time. The gap between consistent networkers and professional isolators doesn't stay flat. It widens year on year because every connection is a potential door, and every door opens onto more doors. And the person who built that architecture has more paths available at every moment of choice or crisis than the person who didn't. You look at the promotions you didn't know to compete for because you weren't in the rooms where they were discussed. You look at the consulting work your former colleague picked up through her network that doubled her effective income for 18 months. You look at the Bosch search in year 5, 4 months, 200 applications, most of which never reached a human being, when a single warm introduction to the right person would have shortened that to 4 weeks. The number you arrive at is not precise, but it is larger than you expected, and it has the specific sting of something avoidable. Here is the other side of that accounting, though, because I want to give you both. You are genuinely skilled. A decade of serious, focused work has made you someone with real depth. Your skills are not borrowed from proximity to the right people. They are yours, built through effort and repetition and the specific competence that comes from doing hard things alone. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, the foundation that makes everything you're about to build worth building. You are not starting from zero. You are adding a dimension to something solid. You are 32. Something needs to start. You know this the way you know things you can no longer afford to defer. Year 9, you start, not grandly, not with a 7-step strategy and a color-coded spreadsheet, though you make a spreadsheet anyway because that's how you're wired and there's no shame in it. You reach out to 3 people you worked with years ago, not to ask for anything, to reconnect, to find out what they're working on and be genuinely curious about the answer. 2 respond immediately with a warmth that surprises you. 1 says he's been meaning to reach out for over a year. The conversation that follows is easy and real and produces nothing immediately except the faint outline of something that might matter later. You say yes to things you've been saying no to for almost a decade. Not everything. You are not performing transformation. You say yes to the lunch you would have eaten at your desk. You say yes to the conference session you would have skipped to catch up on email. You say yes to the introduction someone offers to a person you have no immediate use for because you have finally learned that usefulness is the wrong frame entirely. The right frame is presence, showing up consistently, over time, in the places where your industry thinks and talks and decides, being a real person in those places, having opinions and sharing them, being curious about other people's work without an agenda behind the curiosity. It feels slow. It feels like almost nothing for the first 3 months. And I want you to hear this clearly because it is the most important thing I can tell you about this stage. That feeling of nothing is exactly what it felt like for the people who are 10 years ahead of you. They felt the same nothing. They kept going. The returns are invisible at first, and then they are not. And the transition between those two states happens before you realize it's happening. Professionals who show up consistently in their industry, who attend events, who reach out, who stay present, are dramatically more likely to receive opportunities they didn't apply for. Not because events are magic, because showing up repeatedly in the same spaces makes you real to people who have the power to think of you when something opens. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from depth. And depth combined with presence is actually a more powerful combination than youth alone. Year 10, you are 34 years old. You are sitting across from someone you met 14 months ago at a lunch you almost didn't go to. She is offering you a role, not one she posted publicly, a role she thought of when the need arose, because she knew you, had a picture of you that was accurate and three-dimensional and built over a year of genuine contact. The role is better than anything you have applied for in 3 years. The salary is 28% above your current one. She is not doing you a favor. She is making a good business decision. You happen to be the person she thought of first because you were present when it counted. This is what it actually means to network, stripped of everything transactional and awkward and misnamed about it. It is the practice of being known, of existing in other people's professional reality as a real person with real thinking and real capabilities, of maintaining that existence over time through small and consistent and genuine actions so that when the room is deciding, when a name needs to come to a mind, your name is there. I've spent years watching the difference between the people who built this and the people who didn't. The difference is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even effort, exactly. It is a willingness to be present in the lives of people beyond your immediate circle, without a transaction in mind, without a return you can measure, without knowing which conversation will be the one that changes something. Most people are waiting for the right moment to start, the right conference, the right opening, the right version of themselves that feels ready to walk into a room and make a real impression. I want to tell you something I had to learn the hard way. There is no right moment. There is only this one. The decade you just lived through cost you something real. The compounding of relationships that would have grown alongside your skills. The mentors who could have shortened your learning by years. The peers who would have pulled you into the rooms you didn't know existed. The reputation that travels ahead of you when you've been building it long enough. That is the honest accounting. I give it to you not to produce regret, which serves nothing, but to produce clarity. Because clarity is what changes behavior. And changing behavior now with everything you've built over 10 years of serious work is worth more than you think. You are not behind, you are delayed. There is a difference that matters. Your reputation is not your resume. Your network is not your contacts list. Your career is not your job. It is the sum of every person who has known you, believed in you, thought of you when something opened. And that sum grows in the same way everything meaningful grows, slowly, without applause, without confirmation, through small actions, repeated over a long time by someone who decided to show up even when it felt like nothing was happening. The lunch is warm. You say yes before she finishes the sentence. Something that should have started 10 years ago begins now. Now is the only time it ever actually starts.